Good day, everyone.
Hello.
Today, hello, how are you, Kirsten?
I am great.
Kirsten, it's a pleasure to have you here. And actually, it's one of the times that, when I'm sitting with a tutor of mine or a teacher who already I had a great learning experience with, it's always dear to my heart. Like it's not like any other guest who already came in as a subject matter expert on what they have, but we've had an encounter for a lengthy journey. And I believe, like I'm a student here and coming here to learn more about this with the audience about the solution focused methodologies and how it can support the effective leadership conversations. So, hi, Kirsten.
Hello, Shara. It's great to be here. Thank you for allowing me to share a little bit about solution focus and basically how to have constructive conversations in the workplace. And I think um, the name of the approach is solution focus, but that's really not the main thing that I want to share. I just want to share some some small strategies that every leader and every person who is working can use with their colleagues, with their employees, with even with their bosses. So, yeah, that might be helpful. So I thought, as you said, that most of the people who are watching are in some way in business. Thought that that might be most helpful for people.
Thank you, Kirsten. Just to give the proper introductions, Kirsten is the owner and the founder of Solutions Academy, which started in Germany, yes, but it's now internationally everywhere in the world. It's in Poland, in India, in Turkey, in Italy, and it's being educated in German, in English, and mostly in Russian also, right? It's Ukrainian. Yeah.
Yeah, at the moment, it's been difficult, but we have Russian-speaking trainers and Turkish, Romanian, Polish, English, German, Italian, um, and well, we will see, maybe Arabic.
Ah, yes. So and I believe Kirsten has been in the consulting business for more than 20 years now, most probably more than that. And she has four books out out in the, and one of them is just last week. Yeah. What is the one?
Actually, this is the one
This one.
that's out last week. Yeah.
Last week, yeah, last week we had another one, which is really a great, a contribution in the coaching society. Also through the ICF Germany, she is the leader of ICF Germany, or the country representative, and this is the board duration for her. And I believe Kirsten is also an MCC, ACTC as well. She is also, that's from ICF, and from the EMCC, she is a master practitioner and ESIA. So there are lots of things that she has, and the Solutions Focus Academy is both accredited from ICF and from the EMCC. And I was privileged to be a part of the supervision program, and this is something, I really love. So, Kirsten, I leave the floor for you to where do you like to start today?
I think maybe as you said that most people who are listening are business people, leaders, or people working in some ways. Maybe just share a couple of tips and tricks from the solution focused approach that might be helpful for them. And maybe just we could talk about some typical situations that happen in business. Just as we were preparing for this talk, we were discussing about cultural differences around criticizing people or asking people to do something different. And you were sharing your experience with German and the German culture and the French culture and the American culture. I don't know how it is in the Middle Eastern culture. Maybe in in Germany, I think we tend to be very straightforward. We just say, okay, this is wrong, fix it. Um, I don't know. Uh, my experience with America is that you would maybe use this feedback sandwich, say something positive. Oh, you're such a wonderful person. Could you just fix this? And I think you're such a wonderful person. something like that. I don't know what do you usually do in Eric speak, if there is such a thing, if you can say the Middle East. Probably it's different in different regions as well.
So in the Middle East, it depends on the power difference that you're having and the power distance that you have. So
Hmm.
if you are a superior, for instance, you're a manager, you're an owner, or something like this. It's normal that it's allowed for you to be more outspoken and tell things as they are and just criticize when you see things, and it's even sometimes permeable for some people actually to shout it out loud or something like this. But this is like it boils down to the personal differences in personalities between leaders and each other, because some of them may tend also not to give you proper feedback. You just give a very shallow remark and they consider that you will understand yourself. So in a way, it differs according to personality, but the power distance can give you some sort of how they call it, permission to actually to criticize. When you're
Hmm.
in equal stage or sometimes in lesser, it's more difficult to give proper feedback or open feedback.
Yeah. And
There are
I
other
mean,
dynamics. Yeah.
and I think we know that whatever culture we're in, for a healthy business, we need to be able to talk about problems. We need to be able to talk about things that need to be better.
Exactly.
And I think we need to be able to do that in both ways and
Yes.
laterally. And
Exactly.
and Solution Focus has found a really easy way of doing that, which is by mainly talking about what's wanted and not so much about talking about what's wrong. So, to give you an example, um, this morning we had a problem in my business. Zoom link went out that was the wrong Zoom link, and participants were phoning, "Oh my God, I don't have the Zoom link." A bit chaos. Um, so rather than saying to the person who created the Zoom link, "You provided the wrong Zoom link again," just focus on what's wanted. How can we ensure that the right Zoom link goes out? What are our processes for making sure that we check that the right Zoom link goes out? So really looking at, rather than pointing out what's going wrong, just mention what do you want instead. Let's say somebody is coming late all the time. You might, instead of telling that person off for "you are always late," you might just ask this person, I'm doesn't mean you cannot mention the problem, but I'm noticing that you are, um, last week you came late 2 or 3 times. How can you ensure that you come on time? Is there anything maybe that I can help you with? Um, just That's a forward oriented conversation, and it doesn't lead to blame storming. The question, there is the question, why did something happen, often leads to whose fault was it? And I think nobody likes to be told that it's your fault. Doesn't
Yeah.
usually sit well. So solution focus is a way to move from blame storming to brainstorming. Maybe you could.
Brainstorming, yeah, that's very, 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 like descriptive, blame storming and brainstorming. So I believe this has been maybe a culture now in most of the businesses, that they ask people to actually look at the future, look at what needs to be done. But when I became, when I started studying in the solution focus, it's not that simple. There are lots of concepts behind this, and actually there are ways to actually make it sustainable and not fall in the same mistakes again. Like if we don't look at that, maybe like as an engineer, I always look at the root cause before moving forward, just to not meet it again. Like so. How can you do this in these effective conversations? Like the G mindset always, like look at the what doesn't work, and how to fix
Yeah,
it.
yeah, of course. And I think as an engineer, when I'm riding my bicycle, and suddenly the brake is not working. I will look at the brake and analyze and follow the cable and see where I have to tighten something. I look for the root cause, because that's maybe complicated, but it's not complex. And the idea, the philosophy behind the solution-focused approach is not to confound, not to mix up complex and complicated situations. In an engineering conversation, you are limiting the boundaries of the system. So you're saying, I am looking at this small system of the bicycle, the brake, and where it leads to. So I'm just looking at that. And when you look at a very small segment of a system, you can identify cause and effect. If you were going much smaller on the level of atoms and quantums or something, I'm not a physicist, you wouldn't have predictability. If you make the system much, much bigger, like how likely is it that this brake will, I don't know, break? It's not predictable. But if you look at this small scale, it's predictable. You can say, I press, it doesn't break. Okay, here's the cause. That screw needs to be tightened. Human interactions are not like that. So we are much more complex than a simple mechanical problem. We are not trivial machines as human beings, where the same input will always lead to the same output. If I criticize someone in Egypt, it'll be different from criticizing someone in France. If I criticize Jeannette from Paris, it'll be different from criticizing Maurice also in Paris. So it's not, we cannot predict exactly what will happen. So solution focus has created some general heuristics, some general ideas of what might work. And that's why, you always have to adapt, of course. And the idea of talking about what is wanted rather than what's not wanted, and the idea that please, try to stay away from blaming people, to have more positive interaction with them, is a very simple one, but it is really based on the idea that we cannot really identify a root cause. It doesn't really make sense to identify a root cause. So if the human system, quote unquote system, is so complex that a root cause doesn't make sense anyway, well, then why go looking for it, if looking for it even makes for worse interactions with my staff?
So, can I give you a different argument here? Like somebody is totally hurt from the problem, and, they need somebody to sense they're hurting by talking about the problem. There are people who tend to analyze when they're hurt and see the root causes and look at the story and think about what wrong has happened, So how can the solution, focus support them while they're in this hurt? Like some people actually tend to create some stories. They want somebody to analyze for them, like in therapy mode or something like this. So how can
I don't think
transformation there, and it happens with leadership and it happens with managers, there's some big, challenges that happen there. So
I think the most business case I can imagine is if you are a manager and somebody comes to you and complains about somebody else. Maybe they really hurt the other person's feelings. That's a situation where somebody comes and says, I can no longer work with this person because they are such a horrible human being, and let's say they always steal my ideas and they're bad, and the story is very big about how bad that might be a situation. And now going with this person down the rabbit hole of, yes, this person is bad, is going to cement the story, because it's being retold every time we tell a memory, we are convincing us even more that our memory is correct. So,
Wow.
of course, I will listen as a leader. I will listen to the story and not say, okay, it doesn't matter, go away. Oftentimes I hear managers say, okay, go solve it yourselves. I'm not your kindergarten teacher. I think that's not very respectful. So, of course, as a manager, I would listen. But I would listen in a very targeted way. I would listen for what this person wants instead, rather than listening for what the complaint is. So let's say the person is always stealing my ideas. I cannot share openly with him because he is always criticizing me. Whenever I say something in a meeting, he's rolling his eyes. Maybe that could be the complaint. And then as a manager, I would not say, okay, so your feelings are hurt. I wouldn't recapitulate the complaint, but I would say, could it be that fairness is something that's really important to you? Fairness and respect and appreciation. That's what I'm hearing. And then probably the person will say yes. And at the moment you're feeling that you're not being treated fairly, and then we have something we can work on. Then we can say, okay, so at this point, your relationship with this other person is not like you would like it. You would like the relationship to be different. You would like more respect from this person. Has it ever happened, for example? Then we could explore if there are any exceptions, if no relationships are the same. So maybe Monday mornings it's bad, but then Tuesday mornings, when the person has had their second coffee already, it's a little bit better. And slowly, I might help my direct report to see the exceptions and his or her own agency in the situation, because it doesn't help. We don't have the other person in the room, so we cannot talk about about changing the other person. We need to talk about what my direct report, what my employee is able to do differently. And of course, if it's a conflict that's that bad, I might also invite the other person in. But again, in this conflict, I would try and get both people to talk about how they would like their relationship to be, more than washing dirty laundry, we say in German, and rehashing all the things that went wrong. Of course, sometimes people need to say what's on their mind, so it's said once, but I wouldn't go drill deep. We use something. Friederike Banning, she wrote a book, Solution Focused Conflict Management, and she introduced something she calls the Maori technique. And that is, every conflict party can say what's on their mind, but they can only say it once and for 5 minutes. So you have now 5 minutes and you can share what you think needs to be said so that we can start solving the conflict. And then the
Wow.
other person can reply and say what's on their mind. It's a bit like this Nancy Klein time to think. So you get to you speak for a certain time, the other person really listens well, then the other person speaks and you listen really well. And then you start moving. Okay, so this is where we are now. We'll just accept what it is now, and then we start moving forward.
Wow. I believe to build all of this, it needs a different way of listening, a different way of looking
Yes.
at it, a different way of looking. Like it's a mindset shift. You know. So how can you support different cultures from different backgrounds to integrate this without what they call it being alienated in their own cultures?
I mean, I really don't like to colonize other people's ways of thinking. I think every way of thinking has their right. Every mindset has their right. I don't want to tell people how to think, but maybe I want to invite them to look at, how do you talk in a appreciative way? How do you talk in a way where people feel safe? How do you talk in a way where it's easier to solve problems? And I haven't met a culture, and I've traveled really extensively. I haven't met a culture where somebody says, I really hate being praised. But I don't, the praise looks different in different cultures. We have this German joke about how do you notice that your German manager is praising you? It's like he's not scolding you. That's praise. Yeah. but,
Okay.
but of course, that's a stereotype, and of course, things have changed in Germany a lot, and it's a joke. But sometimes there are a little bit hidden gems and jokes, and you could, let's say, the same task, an American manager would say, wow, that's so amazing, that's so great, and somebody from Germany might say, not bad, and it would be the same level of praise. But the fact that people like recognition, that people collaborate better when they're feeling like their efforts are being recognized. Not sure. I've not met anyone who didn't want to work in an environment like that.
Yeah, I believe, like in some cultures where it is always, like you always give their tough love, like especially, I can tell our schooling system here in the Middle East, mostly is like this, especially in Egypt. I can tell about Egypt and in other, cultures, and somebody starts praising you. Sometimes you like feel, does he want something? In the beginning it starts that until you get used to it. Like you feel like there is something, and sometimes people, when they're, there was I believe there was a study talking about the sandwich feedback, like putting praising and then giving the feedback, and then so when you're starting praising, or when will the but come, when will however come, when will when the beat come, like between the two. So it's sometimes, like the praise, it's according to the context of the culture.
Exactly.
Some people may actually be skeptic, and like in a way they turn into, what does this person want? Are they giving me, let me wait for the bomb when it comes. It will come in the end. Either it is a request or it is a criticism, but it is sugar coated. So
Yeah, but then it's not culturally appropriate praise. It's probably
mhm,
you're overdoing it when you're doing it like that.
yes, and it's not
And
genuine. It's perfect.
yeah, it's really, good praise looks very different in different cultures.
Yeah.
And if you know that praise is not very usual in an organizational context, then I wouldn't go praise, but I would show interest in how this is done, for example. That's the same as praise. So let's
Mm.
say uh, you gave a great presentation, and I know in your culture, open praise saying, oh, wow, Sharaf, what an amazing presentation, you would feel, what's she up to now? And instead, I would go, it's very interesting what you said. Can you show me your slide 2? Uh, that was fascinating. How did you come up with this idea?
Wow.
That's praise, but I'm not putting myself higher than you. I am showing sincere interest in what you're doing.
Hmm.
Especially also with children, somebody your child comes and has a I don't know, I don't know what the system is, and like has a very high, very good mark on their exam.
Hmm.
In German, it would be a 1, an A. In American, a 5, and so has brings back this exam. So, oh, I got, look at that. And instead of saying, great job, wow, asking, how did you do that? How did you manage? Oh, look, number 2 in this exam was really difficult. How did you come up with the idea how to solve that? Yeah. Um, I remember I was once visiting a family solution-focused coach also in Switzerland, and the little boy was coming home, and he was crying. He was really crying. It's like, so what's the matter? What's the matter? And then the solution-focused father was, yeah, I'm not going to mention the name for privacy reasons. He said, wow. And even, what happened? And the boy said, it was so dark. I was so afraid. It was so dark. I was so afraid. And then the solution focused father said, wow. And you managed to come home, even though it was so dark outside and you were so afraid. How did you do that? Yeah, I ran from lamp to lamp. And, from this, to proud little boy in 3 minutes. And it wasn't praise, it was just genuine interest in what the little boy did. And I think there is an art to praise. That you really have to observe how does praise land in this culture, with this person, with this individual. But showing a sincere interest usually never. I don't think how anybody can interpret this as bad intentions.
Wow. So I believe that's really genuine. So can we talk more about, like the solution focused? There is a gallery, or I understand there are lots of tools. There's there are lots of resources, and mindsets and tools, like that can enrich the conversations. You talked now about praise, genuine interest, acknowledging, talk about respect, searching for what we want, looking at what we exactly need to achieve, or how to make it happen afterwards. So what else is in solution, like if we learn this mindset in our conversations, in our leadership conversations?
I think one tool, move, whatever, that is very useful is the scaling question, because it helps to introduce differences into leadership conversations. Let's say you have a performance review with someone, or you want to talk about somebody's performance over a period of time. Then most performance management systems would give that person one average. So let's say you are a 3 or something. And that makes all the differences go away. Let's say you say customer orientation, 3. But this person made a really big effort in let's say January and in March, and all of these differences are being swept away by you just saying 3. If you use a scale and say, okay, if you would write from January to January, when was your customer orientation highest? What was a moment in which you experienced yourself as having a very high customer orientation? Where was that on the scale from 1 to 10? Maybe at a 7, yeah. And what happened? What did you do in this moment? How did you manage? And then maybe, okay, what was one thing that was very low on the scale, and what did you learn from it? So then you turn a measuring conversation into a conversation of differences, which allows the person to coach themselves, and which allows the manager to improve the to improve the relationship, and to help the person to improve their performance, rather than just measuring. So the scaling tool is, I think, very, very useful. Same, let's say, some leaders don't have a lot of time to do hour-long conversations for coaching. So usually you have 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just using the scaling tool, somebody comes and says, oh, I don't know how to do this, boss, tell me. and you say, okay, on a scale of 0 to 10 is where 10 is you know exactly what to do, and 0 is the opposite. Where are you now? I'm at a 6. Okay, so what do you already know? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, and what input do you need now from me? So then your advice is going to be much more targeted. And the person becomes aware of what they already know, which reduces the likelihood of them coming back to you and putting monkeys on your shoulder, and so solving the issues themselves, which is what you want as a leader. So I think the scaling tool is also a very, very effective. The scaling move is very effective and very helpful for managers to empower their teams and to create more ownership and more buy-in with their teams as well.
Yes, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing this generously, Kirsten. And I believe it's really very inviting for learning. I believe now we are on top of our 30 minutes as we agreed
Yes.
in this conversation. And I don't want to take more of your time and from the audience time also, because we have some followers here. And we have Beata Ballet. She has actually sent a message telling, thanks, Kirsten, for the talk. She comes in as LinkedIn user, but I saw her name up. Listen to what he wants instead and what is important to him. This is something that she learned. If you have any, like you're following us in any of the social media channels and you want to give us any comment or, want to interact with Kirsten, you just put the comment and we can share it here. And I believe that there are two maybe announcements that are very important that we need to make. One of them, actually, it's about Solutions Academy. I would love actually, Kirsten, to talk to our audience how Solutions Academy can support them. And maybe if they want to learn more about it, what can you tell them about Solutions Academy and the solution-focused methodology that's the signature move that you have?
Yeah, so we are a accredited coach training school, and we are fully accredited with EMCC and ICF at EMCC from foundation to supervisor level. So we have all the accreditations, and ICF we have also all the accreditations level 1, 2, 3, and we also have a very interesting course called Coaching Skills for Managers and Leaders. So if you're interested in that, and we offer, as we said, in many different languages and maybe also Arabic.
So that's a very strong announcement. So what can we tell in Arabic?
Yeah, please you read it because my pronunciation is not so good just yet.
Okay, Kirsten has been for 1 year learning Arabic now. It doesn't mean that you will be the instructor, but actually, Kirsten.
No. Baby steps.
So Kirsten, dear love, تحييكم وتبشركم أننا نقدم البرنامج بالعربية قريبا إن شاء الله. So the program, there will be solution-focused academy programs that will be actually facilitated in Arabic for the Arabic region. And this will be announced soon. And maybe the first round will be in January, most probably. So let's, for the Coaching Foundation. So stay tuned on that. So
yes, stay tuned.
Yeah.
We'll be back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So can you just maybe wrap up in a very short statement before closure? What do you like, as effective leadership conversations that you want to actually the leaders to take away today and just, put it as a frame before they leave, take out from this session?
Okay, so look at what is wanted and not what's missing. So resource focus versus deficit focus. And look for progress and don't look for an explanation. So look at how you can move up. And always assume that people already know things and try and help people to understand and become aware of what they already know before moving up and adding.
So all these are great takeaways. Thank you for that, Kirsten. And it has been a pleasure talking to you today and having this great conversation. And I always learn when it comes to us together. So thank you, and thanks for those who are following us,
Thank you.
following us everywhere in the world. Okay. Thank you, and